The next session now. So the next session will be presented. Well, I hope you all had a lovely lunch, by the way. Sorry, I just went straight into it then, didn't I? But the next project will be presented by Keele and Staffordshire University. And this project was on mending the gaps for carers in social work curriculum. This project explored perspectives with carers, needs relating to the impact of family finances and professional support. So I'll hand it over to yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start off. My name's Helen Franklin. I'm a lecturer in social work at Keele University, and this was a joint project between Keele and Staffordshire University. We met from the beginning of January 2020, and we met 5 times between then and mid-February. So we managed to get our 5 sessions in before pandemic hit, before we all got locked down. And so we have actually got kind of quite a bit of information. I guess the challenge for us was where we go with it beyond the information and the core kind of findings that we had. And that's been kind of, I suppose, where we've kind of stalled a little bit. So although I think just a note that I kind of wanted to raise as well is, although we did get completed before the global pandemic, there were a couple of sensitive events really that did impact on the group and attendance over the 5 sessions. So there were a few sessions that people missed for whatever reason, one reason or another. In comparison to some of the other groups we've seen this morning, we weren't a terribly big group. We were quite a sort of small select group, but I think that kind of helped us kind of become quite close as a group, really. Okay, so I'm just going to share my slides, and you will be hearing not just from me today, you will be hearing from some of our carers as well. So what we looked at was, and Sukhvia almost got it right there. I think we kind of went off piece a little bit to what we kind of initially anticipated, perhaps. But what we did decide to look at was really what the gaps were in the social work qualifying curriculum. So what were the real issues for carers? What were carers' experiences that they really felt social workers and social work students, before becoming qualified social workers, needed to understand when actually working with carers and their families and the cared for person? So what were some of the core themes and issues that needed to come through that course? Okay, so you should be able to see my slideshow now. Just going to put myself back on that. Okay, so just moving forward from that. So our group, as I said, was quite small. We had 2 social work academics, 1 independent social worker, 5 carers and 4 students. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get everybody back together today for a variety of different reasons. However, we have got 3 of our carers with us who will share their stories and experiences with you in terms of how the project was for them. So our rationale then. So the project was led by myself and Kate B from Staffordshire University. Kate's since moved on from Staffordshire, so I'm here really to sort of represent, you know, the remainder of kind of the project that we did. Both Kate and I have worked very closely with our respective service user and carer groups throughout the social work programme, particularly around sort of some of the skills development sessions. And also then prior to our move into academia as practitioners, we were also, you know, working very closely with carers when we were going out and providing assessments, particularly for our kind of allocated service users, as it were, through their kind of quite changing and challenging times. Additionally, we're both social work lecturers and practice educators, and as such, we're quite interested to find out, you know, how can we best ensure that students of social work are equipped to work with carers as they progress into the social work practice? So what are the real issues for carers, and are they being overlooked? So one of the things that Kate and I, you know, both acknowledged was that within social work curriculum, there really is a clear focus on the service user, so the cared for person, the person who is kind of the person referred to us as a social worker. But that carers' voices are much less often heard. And when they are, it's often in much relation to sort of being consulted about the cared for person, and being in relation to, you know, what's happening with the cared for as opposed to kind of their own kind of personal experiences and journeys as a carer in their own right. And we kind of acknowledge that, although, there have been perhaps some moves, particularly under the Care Act, that, carers assessments are now on an equal footing with the cared for assessments, that things haven't particularly changed around that. So we really wanted to try and identify what can we do as social work academics to try and improve the curriculum going forward, and what are the gaps and what's missing for our carers. So just thinking through, the actual process, we had quite a tight time scale. We felt we did kind of get everybody together quite quickly, and I think that perhaps impacted on our kind of ability to get a broader range of particularly practitioners who were busy and already had quite a number of diary commitments at that point into the group. Our carers were in general very consistent and attended each session. Our social work students, again, we started off I think with 4, and those numbers dwindled down for various reasons. However, it was a very busy time in the curriculum around assignment deadlines and assessments, and then going into sort of semester 2. So we do acknowledge that they perhaps had other time pressures and commitments that meant that their involvement also dwindled off. Unfortunately, we've not been able to sort of identify or find those students. We've tried, we've got their names, we've asked and particularly I think with myself being from Keele and they were Staffordshire students, we've not been able to get those students back on board to contribute to today's session. Okay, so as I said, our aims are really looking at the gaps in the social work curriculum. So what I want to do now is hand over to our carers, and I'm going to start with Alan. Alan, are you there? I can see Wendy and Glen. I can't see Alan. Alan, are you here somewhere? I can see his name. There he is. I'm going to start with Alan.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
Alan.
I'm going to start with Alan to get him to tell you a little bit about his involvement and kind of how he felt the process went for him.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Alan. I have seen in my 45 years as a carer for my wife that in many situations that there has been a significant gap between carers and the way some social workers come into a difficult family situation and presume that they are the so-called professional. One answer to a situation or crisis does definitely not fit all. In my case, my wife was seriously physically ill, but also disabled physically. This also affected her emotionally and mentally. Many times, professionals like social workers come into a situation like mine and they think they can solve all our problems and do not take on board the effect it all has on the wider family, but focus just on the cared for. What about the effect on me as a carer? The effect on our relationship as husband and wife? The effect on children and grandchildren? Each case must be treated on a case-by-case individual situation. They need to listen not only to the cared for, but to the carer, as very often the carer are the experts or professional in their own situation. It would be good if social workers can learn not to impose things upon carer and the cared for and the family without fully talking it through and together making and agreeing a plan to help and support and perhaps direct to other professionals or agencies. What about the carer, like myself, who has finished their caring role because of the loss of the person they cared for? When the service user or cared for passes away, the case is usually closed. At least one or more visit from a social worker to the carer to perhaps direct them to other professionals or agencies would sometimes be required. This has been my personal experience on my family's journey, and we have had quite a number of social workers who have not been helpful and in some cases made our situation much worse. But fortunately, we've had a few social workers, and I mean a few, who have listened and have been excellent help. Wouldn't it be really good if we could find a way together in the training of social workers to mend the gap that very often exists between social workers and carers? That could be in the form of training of students and also social workers already in the job. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I'm going to hand over to Wendy now, who will share her perspectives.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you a little bit about my background, really, because it is relevant to what I'm going to say to you today. I've been a healthcare professional since 1963, so that puts an age on me, really, and an academic since 1985. And I considered myself to be a good, credible professional. But it wasn't until 24 years ago, when we had our grandson who was disabled, and since I've been working with the carer group, that I really began to understand what it was like for carers who had that lived experience. So I'm a grandmother to my precious grandson, who is autistic with learning disabilities and profound needs, really. He's not self-caring and he's got very limited communication skills. He can't talk at all, really. We're not the main carers, but my husband and I have given regular ongoing care for the past 24 years. When the opportunity arose to be involved in this project, I thought it might be a forum where I could meet other carers, listen to and share some of the challenges they faced, hear what coping strategies they had developed, and attempt to raise some of the issues that the carers face. I felt the first meeting was rather strained, and it left me to reflect on what I could and was prepared to contribute. I suppose I was curious, but cautious. The group seemed quite large at the time, and apart from one service user, who was Alan, we were all strangers. The project expectations were clarified, and the participants introduced themselves and highlighted their caring responsibilities. I was concerned initially about disclosing very sensitive and personal information, and as I was not the main carer, I needed to get consent from my son and daughter-in-law, redisclosing and sharing sensitive issues with people I did not know. I consulted with them throughout the meetings, and they shared many of their concerns with me. By week 3, the group numbers diminished, and in a way, I felt that was an added benefit, because it was interesting to see how quickly the remaining participants moved from a group to a very cohesive team. We became confident to share very sensitive and important issues, and I felt there was a trust and a respect between us, and we encouraged and supported one another, often during very emotional and sometimes tearful situations. Although our roles varied, it became evident that we shared many common issues and challenges, and although this was in some way reassuring, it was also frustrating, as we highlighted the gaps between social work professionals and carers. There was consensus amongst us, also shared by my family, that often the support or advice provided by social workers focused on things such as benefits, education and service provision, but often, in our experience, failed to recognise and understand what it means to be a carer year on year, facing the challenges and trying to have a fulfilling family life and work life, and to support siblings. It is assumed anyone can care, and expectations seem to be that carers can carry on regardless of changes in circumstances, personal problems, work pressures, or other family commitments, including siblings. In fact, often it seems the issues are not even considered. Speaking to my daughter-in-law, she said, "I wish they could walk a mile in my shoes. How do they know what the lived experience entails? The social worker visits, often a different professional, asks the same questions, ticks the boxes, everything appears okay, no issues highlighted, nice home, good job, and assumptions are made, everything's okay. No regular checks are made, limited personal touch with very little understanding about what it is really like to have a young person with profound learning disabilities who's never going to be self-caring, have an independent life, have a loving partner, a career or a family, and in later life, when we are gone, be dependent on health and social care." Reflecting on those thoughts and dealing with these challenges day in and day out, I wondered if there was any consideration that carers go through a lifelong grieving process. Feelings of loss and anger, bargaining, hope, that although not overt, can surface at any time. Carers may reach a state of acceptance, but always have hope. For example, I still hope that my grandson will one day talk and perhaps say, "I love you, Gran." Grieving may occur at certain times. For example, milestones may trigger some elements of the grieving process. Sadly, this is often missed, I think, by social workers. Perhaps key milestones could be red flagged. For example, a 21st birthday, when it is apparent there are very few friends to invite to share the event. Perhaps a telephone call could give a parent some support, reminding them that their loved one is important. So for me, the gap is developing some understanding of what long-term care really means. The theory can be taught, lectures can inform, but it is only through listening to those who care, who have the expertise, the knowledge and the skills developed through that lived experience, that some understandings can begin to develop. This became very apparent during our discussions in the project, when I felt the range of knowledge and experience and the coping strategies developed over the years was immense. I focused on the negatives here, but of course recognise there's a lot of excellent support, and a lot of excellent support is given. But we love our grandson. He's the light of our life. And it was apparent during our discussions that we all felt the same. We wanted the best for those that we care for and love, for them to have access to equal opportunities, not to be at the bottom of the pile, to maximise their potential, and to have support to enable the carers to give their very best. When I was researching for this little talk, I did I was looking for a little verse, and I found this, which I felt really reflected what we were trying to say. And it goes like this. It says that grief is like the ocean. It comes on waves, ebbing and flowing. Sometimes the water is calm, and sometimes it's overwhelming. All we can do is learn to swim. But for the carer, even if you can swim and you're a strong swimmer, when the waters get rough, perhaps too rough, a little help or reassurance can sometimes be needed. And I think this is where social workers miss out. And I think they could give us a little bit more support in those sort of events. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. And Glen, I'll pass over to you finally.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Glen, and I've been involved with both Keele and North staffs for a number of years, sharing my experiences as a parent carer for my son Jonathan, who's now 32 and has severe learning disabilities. He's currently in supported living, local to his family, and I'm still actively involved in his life and future. So let's talk about the process. The process really worked for me. We didn't make notes, we didn't write up ideas or questions. We were just encouraged to talk together with a number of other carers who all had different relationships with the person who needed care. Supported and encouraged by social work lecturers who did all the note taking, and with questions from students, we very quickly opened up about the detail of our experiences. As confidence within the members of our group developed, we went into great detail of not only the practical issues we had faced, but how we had felt emotionally. It did bring back some difficult recollections, and I was sometimes choking on my words as emotions resurfaced. I did in fact find the whole process to be very therapeutic, to unload inner thoughts that I'd shared with very few people. My biggest realization was the commonality of all our experiences, despite our differing care support situations. These shared experiences confirmed the constant pressure of being a carer, about the fact that emotionally the pressure of caring is always there. The ongoing fear of failure, questioning whether we were doing enough and what does the future hold, were a common theme held by all the carers in the group. The students found the conversations between the carers to be insightful, as it gave them some different perspectives to consider. We all freely shared our experiences and were happy to clarify, particularly to the students when necessary. I thought the balance of the group was also a key factor and helped us to reach our conclusions. Over the 5 weekly meetings, we did lots of talking, and there were times when we needed some direction or focus. With Sally in the team, who was our independent social worker, quite often she would do a recap or share her experiences that often summarised our thoughts. And with guidance from Helen, we managed to distill our thoughts, and as a group, these developed into common themes based on our discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Glen. And I'm just going to, Sally unfortunately can't be with us today, but she has sent me a few words. I'm just going to reshare that screen. So I'll share those with you. And there's a picture of Sally there, if anybody's interested. So Sally said, you know, at the start of the project, I thought the gap was between the expectations of families and what a social worker can actually offer in terms of time and limited resources. I didn't think this was a fixable gap, but here was an opportunity to reflect on it, and so I was willing to try. Mend the Gap gave family carers the opportunity to share experiences and for us all to have frank discussions over our differing viewpoints. I had the opportunity to listen and really hear the impact of the lifelong relationship the cared for person has on their families. The grief and loss, the pride and joy, the milestones hit and missed, and the generosity of those caring to put their loved ones first. Key issues were highlighted, which we could all agree on, and bridges were built across the gap of our shared understandings and frustrations with the system. Families want to be heard and understood, to know that they aren't being judged in terms of risks and services when they admit to feeling vulnerable. They want social workers to see the whole family, not just the individual they care for, and for their social worker to think about the impact the caring role has on them all. They want space to talk about their everyday experiences of family life, and for their social worker to really listen to the impact that this has on them. They need their feelings, both good and bad, to be acknowledged and validated. Good social work is based on good social work values, respect for others, a non-judgmental attitude, and openness to see life from another's perspective. When carers feel valued, appreciated, and supported in their role, we see our values in action. So that was Sally's view on the process and what she kind of felt she gained from that. So I'm just going to move on then to the findings. I mean, for myself personally, I found it a very powerful experience. I learned a lot from it. I felt, you know, particularly the process where just that free kind of engagement between carers, students, social workers, able just to talk things through. There were things that I was learning from that as we went along, things that perhaps I hadn't thought about within my own practice and within my own kind of challenge. And I think for me as well, that whole process of hearing the carer's voice verbatim and the discussions between them was really powerful. And I think students will get a lot from that, rather than, I suppose, lecturers, you know, just telling, you know, what our thoughts are on that. So certainly, you know, definitely the kind of the narrative approach, hearing the real voices through there, but the discussions between the voices, you know, were just as powerful. So I'm just going to move on to our findings. So what we found was that as the discussions were taking place, there were kind of three key themes really that were emerging. The first theme was the impact on siblings and children particularly, but also on the wider family. I think there was a number within the group who either had, where there were siblings of the cared for person. There was a member of the group who had been the sibling. There were members where the children had siblings, and just looking at some of the impact of you know, the lack of opportunities and spontaneity that family life it was so limited for those families, because you can't just say, right, I think we'll just go to the zoo today, or I just think we'll do whatever today. So because you've got to think about the process, think about, okay, how do we accommodate the cared for person? What do we need? How are we going to, you know, what's the access to toilets? What's all of that kind of thing? It's, you know, it's very, very difficult just to say, you know, yes, when somebody gives you an open invitation. Limited opportunities for things like, you know, parties, you know, that kind of thing, limited, just very much limited, and sort of thinking about that impact on that sibling. So how is the sibling feeling? There were some issues raised around bullying as well. So the perspectives of the sibling's friend, particularly as a child, how were they being responded to at school? Was there any bullying going on? How are others perceiving them because they have a disabled sibling? Is it, you know, because they can't take part in some of the other wider activities that there's perhaps some bullying happening? So I think one of the things that, you know, certainly we need to be sort of highlighting, you know, both in, you modules relating to working with adults, but also working with children, young carers, children who have siblings who are, a child in need, who have a disability. What is the impact on them, and how can we bring that through within our teaching? So that was the first theme that came through. The second theme was particularly around isolation and emotional resilience. One of the things that our carers picked up on quite a bit is when the cared for person is a child, you're not doing the normal things if they're perhaps not at a mainstream school. You're not doing the school run. They may be being picked up by transport and taken to a school many miles away. You don't get to meet with other parents, and that can then link you to, for example, parties and getting to know other people in the class. Things like, understanding who the child's friend is at school. Data protection may say to the social worker, I can't tell, or to the school, I can't tell you the details of the other children in that class. But that child may not be able to do, as children mainstream may be able to do, is take a party invites in and distribute them around. You don't know who else to contact. You don't know who the parents are. So being able to try and manage things like that and enable kind of the normal things, as it were, is very, very difficult. And that can then make you feel much more isolated because you don't know the other parents in a very similar situation to you. We talked about the role within the relationship as well. So in particular, thinking about, am I a partner or a spouse, or am I a carer? Am I a father, grandmother, or am I a carer? So what is that role within the relationship? It's a very difficult relationship to balance. It's thinking about, how do I define myself? Do I define myself as a carer? Do I define myself as the role that I should have, as it were, as in spouse, father, etc. We talked within that as well about guilt and resentment. So we talked about feeling guilty sometimes around that we're not able to give the cared for person the things that we would have liked to been able to because of the limitations to them. We talked about sometimes those feelings of, I think one of the things that came through was around, well, actually, I hope that they go first because I can't imagine a world where I'm not there to support them, kind of thing. And then feeling guilty about that thought, thinking, actually, no, I shouldn't think like that. If it's my child, they should outlive me. But what's going to happen when I go? And I'm more worried about that. So there was a whole discussion around guilt, potentially, feelings of resentment, which weren't overarching, but kind of could creep in there, and then you feel guilty again. It's a bit of a cycle. And I think Wendy touched on it as well around grieving as well, and those milestone events where you see things happening. Your children are going, going to school, and your child's not going with them. Turning 21, those kind of milestones where you're feeling, I can't give them what perhaps somebody else would have had. And then finally, we talked about the financial impact on the person and the family, and the social work students need to be able to understand potentially some of the benefit systems. I know we talked a little bit about that, and the financial systems, or at least where to signpost to somebody else who can support if they haven't got the detailed understanding themselves. Not necessarily giving the carer, the web address to say, go and have a look at this, because the carer may not have time to do that. There's kind of an assumption carers are kind of just there, but got lots of time. But actually, that's not always the case. And we also talked about careers as well, and the fact that many carers will have shortened their careers. They may have held back on any promotional opportunities. They may be working part-time, not full-time. They may not be working at all because of their caring commitments. And potentially, social workers need to think about, okay, when am I planning my visits to this carer? How does it fit with their working life? If I am going out there and they've taken time off work, not to then go in and say, I've got all this, it'll only take 20 minutes, will be quick. Actually allow them that time to actually speak to you and open up. So we talked about those things there. Conscious of time, so I'm going to sort of shoot through to my final slide then. So the final slide really was just some concluding remarks really from our carers, and that was around see and hear me. So social work students recognise the strength that it can take carers to open up and be really open, But when carers are opening up and they are sort of saying how it is, it's not always a crisis. It's not always a cry for help. Sometimes it is, I just want somebody to listen to me and to hear me. Tip number 2 was read the case notes. Who else is around the cared for person? Very often we will always speak to kind of the same person time and time again, but actually there's rarely only one carer or person impacted. So quite often there'll be a number of people around that cared for person. What are their views? What are their experiences? And how much are they inputting, you know, in terms of support? Point 3 was don't try to find quick fixes. Sometimes it can be carers in crisis, can we get respite? And you know, a quick fix that way, but actually moving that person to a different place could be a different source of stress. Carer is always going to be a carer, so you know, don't always think about it as a quick fix. And finally, we talked about beating the system. We talked about our frustrations with the system, as it were. So really to encourage social work students and social workers to think outside the box. What else is out there? Try and manage the endings. If you work with that cared for person, and you know, make sure there's an ending with the carer as well. So having those kind of discussions. So having that confidence to really raise different ideas. And that sort of brings us to the end. I've just had to rush the end to kind of find things there because I'm just conscious of time. So hopefully that's been interesting to see what we've been thinking about what needs to be on the curriculum. How we take that forward is our next step.
Thank you very much, Helen, and your team as well. Thank you for that really good presentation. There's some really good points there that I think we can all reflect on as practitioners, and I think, you know, really understanding the people that we work with is so important. So understanding the world that they live in, and actually for carers, the impact that it has not only on them but their family as well. So thank you for that. We're going to be moving on to, if there's any questions, we will have a bit of time at the end. Or you can pop it into the chat, and we can, and if Helen or a member of your project team can answer those questions in the chat, that would be great. So last and not least, we have University of Wolverhampton, and we have, is it yourself, Mac?
It is, and Nigel should be here.
Great, okay. And your project was on learning from people with lived experience, future of social worker.
Yeah.
I'm here as well, Mac.
Oh, hi, Doreen. Good afternoon. I couldn't see you on my screen.
Good afternoon. So it's over to yourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nigel, have you joined us? Hello, Nigel.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I can't see you. Have you got your camera on?
I'm trying to turn it on. Yeah.
Okay. I'll share the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you, Nigel. Right. Let me just get the PowerPoint, share the PowerPoint. Just takes a couple of minutes to sort out. Right. Hopefully you can all see this PowerPoint. We have got a video, everybody, to show you, which will be shown towards the end. And Adam is kindly going to sort that out for me. So thank you, Adam. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to introduce, Doreen, would you like to introduce yourself? And Nigel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Doreen Van Hiley, and I've been a member of the Wolverhampton University.
Thank you, Doreen. Nigel?
Yeah, I'm Nigel Hayden. I've been working with the University in Service User Care Involvement for about nearly 15 years now.
Thank you, Nigel. And I'm Maqsoodah Ashraf, Mac for short, and I work at the University of Wolverhampton. I have been a social worker for 18 years, and I've got to say I find the projects that I've listened to today very interesting, very powerful, and I hope that you enjoy our presentation too. Okay, so I'll start just to introduce the project team. So obviously I was the facilitator of the project. So we started the project just after Christmas 2019, right through to the end of February 2020. So we'd met 6 times. There were people with lived experience. There was Nigel, Doreen, Mary, who can't make it today, Patricia can't make it today, and neither can Kay. So we had quite a few members from our success team. Our students, unfortunately, are on placements and have got various meetings. So unfortunately, they can't make it this afternoon, but we had 2 students involved on the project, and we had a practitioner patients with us from Wolverhampton County Council who's been with us today, but has had to leave this afternoon due to work commitments. Okay, so the next slide, Doreen, would you like to present?
What would you like me to do?
Just read the slide.
Oh, sorry. Yes, in the first week we got together to discuss the remit of the project and what we thought we might be doing with it in the end, if I can put it like that.
Yeah.
So we thought we would like to put together a module where service users could enhance the learning experience of social work and social care students, and enable more contact with service users and carers.
Excellent, thank you.
I've expanded it a bit, sorry.
No, that's fine, thank you, Doreen. And just to add to that, Doreen, the module that we were thinking about would be delivered over 12 weeks.
That's right.
10 of which would need to concentrate on the content, and the other 2 weeks would be working towards the assignment, workshops and actual assessments in the final week. Okay. Nigel, would you like to talk about the next slide?
Yes, I don't mind. I think this was about the themes for the module, and yes. It was the teaching and learning needs to embed a diverse range of culturally sensitive activities, which would build upon the knowledge that we all had, looking at similarities and differences, and looking to find a deeper understanding of diverse cultures. And how we would go forward and from this knowledge understand how we could break down cultural and other barriers. I think talking about this, the members of success, I think we should explain to people, it's an acronym for service users and carers, contributing to the education of students for services. It wasn't just that we were being arrogant and calling ourselves success, but they really, I think, having heard some of the earlier ones in Albert in particular, I think all of this was learning. Everyone was learning, coming together. Mend the Gap was about everyone learning from each other, because each person had other things to learn. Professionals actually learning from the service users and carers. And from the last presentation, I think it's important that carers, we understood that carers should not be ignored. And that's why I think we thought this module going forward was so important, to incorporate a module which was coming from service users and carers, largely delivering it. Yes. So that the perspectives of service users and carers could be brought to the attention very early on. This would be in level 4, to bring the attention of the students, what they had to know about how it felt to be on the other side of the coin, as it were, and to realise we were all part of the same coin. And to be quite honest, this is something that had been trying to develop at the University of Wolverhampton for some years, and it just seemed to me this was to be the cherry or the icing on the cake, and trying to develop it. So, and we had hoped that similar modules could develop through the university and perhaps through other universities, because it's essential, I think. And somebody mentioned about the caring and empathy. I think that comes back to actually how we select people to be people persons right at the beginning. And then we all have to have empathy as to how we go forward. We didn't realise as service users and carers how difficult it was to put together a module. We learned that through the six meetings we had. And but we were able to stretch out and project a sort of skeleton. But filling in that skeleton, of course, because of the pandemic, we haven't really had as much opportunity as we would like to have had to fill in that skeleton. But we strongly believe that there should be some sort of module, because for all the themes that we've heard today, I think at the root of it all is the education that's where it all comes into, bring it into the education process. I mean, all of our people in service user carer group I don't think there's anyone there who doesn't want to be there because they think the prime thing is to hopefully enhance the education of the students. But the ultimate aim always seems to be, let's hope that ultimately out there in the real world, services will be improved because of the contributions that service users and carers make during the course of the students' education at the university.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. So moving on through the themes and the topics for the module, we looked at things like communication, the types of communication, our use of symbols, verbal, non-verbal, written, listening skills. Another topic we discussed was the role of a social worker, and that's come through in some of the conversations that we've had today. Understanding the complexities of social work, the legalities, some of the barriers that social workers themselves face, and obviously confidentiality and GDPR, which is, you know, quite a major issue working in organisations. Some of the other topics were around language, the use of labels, and how certain terminology stigmatizes people. So it's about looking at the use of language, looking at carers' assessments, individual assessments, conversation with a purpose, carers' views, and looking at care plans. And then
could I just come in there, Mac? I mean, I think this was quite an important one, really, because this is a sea change in how you actually work with people who need care and people who are caring, because you're putting them in the front of the page, really, and you're asking for their views. It's different to doing an assessment like ticking boxes.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time talking about making this a conversation on an equal basis, and a lot of that's come through today.
Yes.
Thank you. So the content of our discussions over the 6 weeks as a project group, we managed to draft a structure of the module. In week 5, we decided upon the title of the module, and the title is called Future Social Workers Learning from People with Lived Experience, which would be a 20-credit module. We evaluated the project, and that was sent through to the West Midlands Teaching Partnership. And the final week, we had a celebration, and we did make a video. So to conclude, really, before we show you the video, future social workers learning from people with lived experience, we are hoping to embed across a range of our undergrad, postgraduate, CPD courses when we actually come to revalidate, which is due in the next kind of year or so. So this PowerPoint presentation and the video link has actually been embedded into our undergrad current social work and postgrad current social work sessions on skills days, etc. And students have found it very, very useful in terms of sharing practice with practitioners, service users and carers from our success team, and also academics. And now I would like to ask Adam.
Could I just say something, Mac, before you do the video?
Yeah.
I think interesting. I want to make some comments about the conference today, about how many of the themes, the similar themes, have run throughout all of the GAP projects, which I think is quite an interesting. Well, it's not an interesting phenomenon. I sort of have expected it, but it means that we're all sort of thinking on the same wavelength, and that can be used in any future learning experiences, I would suggest.
Thank you, Jory.
I made a list of them, really, because there's inequality, listening, respect, equality for all of the people involved, make a change, new curriculum, new way of working, and involvement and listening. And the major one is co-production.
Co-production.
Yeah, quite agree. Thank you both.
Okay.
Adam, could I ask you kindly ask you to share the video? Thank you.
So obviously, as you can see, the 6 weeks work that we've done, we've kind of looked at ideas around what could go into a module. So topics around communication, understanding the role of a social worker, etc. And then we move forward to look at the modules, and then the types of assessment, and then the structure of what our module would look like. So how do you all feel it's gone?
My expectation for me as a practitioner was to understand people with lived experiences, and I think listening for me was the key point. So I can understand how do people feel when we come in their homes, how do they feel when they are having caring roles themselves, how can we improve ourselves as practitioners to work with people, because based on what I've observed and listened to everybody here, I think the gap was there.
Yeah.
Whereby people, some of them don't feel listened by practitioners.
Yeah.
So for me as a practitioner, it's something I'm going to take back to my colleagues as a reflective practice to say, based on the Mend the Gap, what I've experienced and listened to, is people need us to listen to them more.
I've loved doing it. I think I struggled at times to fit it in with everything else that's going on, with semester 2 just starting, but it was so nice to do something that was completely off the book. Like it was, there was no, you didn't have to prepare for it in a sense, really. You could just come and just be yourself, and that's what made it. It was just so, it's just been so light-hearted. But what I've taken from it has like been massive. So in my assignments, there's so much that I can put into that I've learned. From Patricia talking about ethnic communities and hobbies and interests, that's like kind of sparked a little bit of a fire inside of me, really, into something that I really want to push for, that I have noticed that gap is there. And also working just with professional service, there's so many different people as like helped me to develop my interpersonal skills. So how I communicate, how I listen, how my body language is. Like I can take that into my placements, and also with students that I'm with in lectures and seminars to relay that information really and that knowledge.
I personally feel it's given me, or should I say, the respect among all of us that my voice has been valued. Because oftentimes when I've actually talked about things like, diversity and gaps within provision for people from different backgrounds, often I felt that sometimes they may have heard but not actually action what I've actually said. So for me, this, hopefully, fingers crossed, that it's going to be put into a module and rolled out across the university, and my aspiration is that it will go further than that. It's really, really exciting for me.
Well, I'd just like to say, what a fabulous opportunity. It's so stimulating to hear everyone's views, to share everyone's views, and to focus in on the themes of communication, which is one of my particular interests close to my heart after a lifetime of caring and being a health worker. It's lovely to lose those labels and feel that this lived experience is being used in the most effective way going forward, and that's what I've observed from this session.
I've been coming to this university as part of the Service User Carer group for about 13 years now. And you sometimes feel that then you're losing that inspiration, or you feel you've been hitting your head against a brick wall for so long, and all you feel is the pain. But this has been inspirational in the approach that it's taken towards hopefully developing a module, as Patricia has said. We know that might not happen, but we feel that there's a possibility it will happen. The communication that's mentioned, to me, the most important, we talk about communication, but the most important aspect of communication that I've been banging my drum about for years is listening, really listening to what people say, because if you don't listen, then you don't have any idea what they really mean, and you then have to paraphrase when they're telling you that so that they fully appreciate on the other side that you understand what they're saying to them, and that is so important. And I just feel that, just to repeat again, I feel that this has been an inspirational group, and I hope that this sort of work will be expanded throughout the university, not only in social work but in other areas.
Yeah. Thank you, Nigel. And can I just say a huge thank you, because I think you've all been absolutely fantastic. You've contributed so many ideas with a range of issues that have impacted on you personally and also professionally. We've looked at it in terms of mending the gap between people with lived experience, students and academics. Thank you ever so much.
Being involved in this project has allowed me to partner with students and social work professionals and the academics to tackle some of the gaps within current social work. That this project will produce a tangible module that has the potential to be a model for other universities teaching social work and carried forward into the social work profession has been inspirational and motivational for myself.
This project's given me an opportunity to kind of really think quite deeply about the relationship between social work practitioners and the people that they want to help. One factor that motivated me was a kind of a sense of confusion I think I had when social workers became involved in my son's life and therefore in my life. Even without the barriers that many other people face, I found myself unsure of what the role of the social worker was and how they could address the issues that my son was facing. So to improve that is a motivation. And as a carer also in the past, I have felt a sense of them and us between the practitioner and the person needing the help. So it was important that that was addressed as well. So also to get an appreciation of the factors that everybody operates under, whether it's academics, practitioners and people with lived experience.
I was initially drawn to Mend the Gap because having a colourful past, I could say, with having a child who's worked closely with CAMS, mental health in my family where I've been that main carer, helping and supporting them. I felt like as though having that knowledge and that experience, it would help in mending that gap in the communities. And I think especially with from a student's point of view, it's difficult coming into a job that I think has such a stigma behind it. I wanted to kind of change that stigma really and how I go about doing that in the right way.
For me as a practitioner to really be in the same environment with people with lived experiences as well as carers, to hear their voice, how they feel about practitioners coming to see them in their own homes, and to actually have an understanding of how they feel about social work roles, which during conversations that we had in this environment, it really helped me to open up my eyes, as well as my own professional development and personal development. How in future, as practitioners, how can we improve our work? How can we improve for individuals to have an understanding why are we there? What's our roles? Because what I feel like being here, people really, some of them did not understand what is a social worker role. So I think just being here in this environment, it actually opened my eyes, and
I became involved with the university because as a retired, because I'm very old, a retired health professional, and having cared for my son for 40 odd years who has complex needs and actually has a 24-hour care package. So I felt that those experiences throughout my life could really be used for others. And that was my motivation for becoming involved.
My initial thoughts were that it would increase the profile of service user care and involvement here at the university. I've been involved with this for well over a decade now, and it has come on a lot, and I think the university has been proud of the way it's conducted. Or engage with service users and carers, but I think there's still a long way to go. So what I was hoping was that this ultimately would increase the profile not only in social work, which is where I started with my work at the university as a service user carer, but throughout the whole university.
Thank you, Adam. Here, Adam. Do you want to pause the video? The video is 20 minutes long, so I'm just conscious of time. The link is in the chat if anybody would like to copy and paste the link, and then you can watch the full video. And we've had quite Nigel and Doreen, we've had many thanks in the chat from Albert Moyen, David Charles from BCU, lots of people thanking you for your input and all the project team. So thank you very much. And that really concludes our presentation, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mac, and thank you everyone else who contributed to that presentation. That was brilliant. And you know, it just reflects how important it is to collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
And learn from each other. And I know with the teaching partnership, we're really passionate about this in terms of getting practitioners involved and also those, you know, that have experience, that are experts by experience as well, to get more involved in social work. I just want to thank everyone today for their brilliant presentations. I know that I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm sure all of you guys have. I've just been so impressed with the enthusiasm and the insight that all of you have. You're very passionate about what you've spoken about. It's been amazing to listen to, and I think, you know, with collaboration, I'm all for collaboration. I'm very passionate about collaboration myself, and I think it's so important in terms of the future of social work. If we want to do social work in the best way possible, you know, working with each other and learning from each other is the way to go. So I really want to thank everyone. We have got a few minutes because we're not due to actually finish until 2 o'clock. So what I thought was that we could open it up for questions. If people had any questions about any of the projects today, then you're more than welcome to put your hand up or just take yourself off mute and ask a question to anyone from the 5 projects. So I'll just give people an opportunity just to ask any questions if they have any, if that's okay with everyone. Oh, we've got a hand up, so let me just go to who it is on my list. Just bear with me. It's Shadda, is it? Yes?
Yes. Yeah. I just, like to share that, the university have done a very, very excellent presentation all day today. And it is carer focused, patient focused, and it's brilliant. And I would like all the universities who were involved to make that grow. And you got some coordinators and things like that. And the university have got a skilled professional carers, involve them into further of this expert by experience carer to be involved at a professional level. It's a brilliant. I would like to congratulate all the principal and the leaders of this presentation, the head teachers who were putting this together, and the principal of the university. Well done. I think we should do an international event showing the world how we are carer focused, patient focused, and how we are training the adult and the social care. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you, Shadda, and well done to yourself and everyone else that contributed. It's obviously been a massive team effort, and you've all worked really well together. So thank you to everyone. If there's anyone else that wants to ask a question, I'm just going to check the chat as well, just to see if there's any questions. Okay. I think we've got lots of, well dones within the chat, some really good feedback. Yeah, so just some really, really good feedback. And if, you have a chance to read some of these comments, those that did, present today, please read them back, because it's some great feedback. Okay, so anyone else who wants to? Oh, I've got another hand up. Let's have a look at my list. Just bear with me. I have to go to my list. So I've got Reshma.
Yeah, I suppose just to say, I mean, all the projects were very different and some similarities, etc. But one of the biggest similarities I noticed throughout the day was this gap for me as a disabled person who uses services about local authorities engaging. And if teaching partnerships could, promote that part of it, I think it would really engage people more.
Yeah.
Rather than making people like myself cynical, it would, because all the work at universities, all the work different projects do is absolutely brilliant, but I don't see it as much from local authorities within the West Midlands.
Okay. So it's about having that input from everyone who's involved in social work, you know, those practitioners on the front line, and the local authorities themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to see, you know, teacher partnerships being able to do a bit more with local authorities, really, all local authorities. So
definitely
really support people who experience services.
No, definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Reshma. Thank you. And then we've got Nigel.
Yes, it just occurred to me from hearing some of what happened during today that there was people talking about professionals or practitioners not having enough knowledge in specific areas. I just wonder if obviously the social work course is generic and it turns out generic social workers, shouldn't it be incorporated, or shouldn't we have specialist modules beyond that for people going into areas like disabilities or whatever, so that they can learn the specifics about it? And a lot of those specific modules, I would have thought, it should be involving people with lived experiences in those particular areas.
I think definitely it's something that, as a teaching partnership and the local authorities and HEIs that, you know, some of them are here today, it is about getting people involved in training. So those with lived experience involved in training, involved in modules within the university. So I think that's something that we're definitely looking at in terms of progressing. And I think that is happening, but I think it needs to develop further. I don't know if there's any other comments in relation to what was just said from anyone in the group.
There's some in the chats up here.
Oh, is there something in the chat? Sorry, I have to keep flicking back from the attendees. Okay. So we've got Helen Franklin, definitely need more people with lived experience involved in CPD and training, definitely. And I think coming from a local authority where I deliver a lot of training, that's something that I've definitely reflected on since being in this position, about how we can get individuals with lived experience involved in our training. So it's definitely something that we can promote as part of the teaching partnership. Okay, so we have Shraddha, have you got your hand back up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to share that I'm involved in local authority a lot as a carer, and also as a patient of a family member who is a patient, and the local authority are fully aware of it. And this is how I was introduced to the university.
Right.
And they are working in all level of the department, and you'll be surprised how many meetings we are attending. And the people who are involved is same as your university, people with disability, people with eyesight problem, everyone is involved heavily. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud that they had introduced me to your university. So congratulations and well done.
Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you for that. Okay, so if there's any more questions, then we can take one more question. If not, I think we're good to sort of finish now. So let me just have one more look in terms of hands. We haven't got any hands up. So I just want to thank everyone again for their presentations and their hard work. It's been a great morning and afternoon. Oh, I've got Mark. Mark's got his hand up. Did you want to say something, Mark?
Just to ask you what happened next. What happened now?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mark, in terms of what we're going to do in terms of Mend the Gap. I think that's something that we will be discussing in terms of actually, you know, in terms of if we continue other Mend the Gap projects within the teaching partnerships. So that's something that we've definitely got to go away and think about. I know in terms of a number of the projects, the things that, you know, need to be progressed. So obviously they will sort of regroup and maybe take things forward. Albert, did you want to say anything in relation to that?
Yes,
you might be the best person.
Thank you, Sophia. I wanted to thank the teaching partnership, especially Adam and yourself, for all the work you've done, and also the support from Cheryl to do this, to hold the Mend the Gap conference here online today. As you know, some colleagues will be aware that we had planned this conference on site at BCU for May 2020, and we had plans to have over 200 guests at BCU to do a live conference. Since then, my role has changed a little bit, but I look forward to any future developments, and please stay in touch with me. But my main point today is thank you, Sukfir. Thanks to everyone who presented, and a special thanks to the Teaching Partnership for hosting this. And I look forward to working with you and seeing you again in the future.
And you, Albert. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to be closing the session now. So have a good